At what time we were living in Hendon, in the northwest of London, and as we felt that there must be similar meetings being held in our locality, we looked up one of the local papers and discovered an announcement stating that the Hendon Psychic Society was holding a meeting at the weekend, giving the name of the visiting medium. On the following Sunday, we attended our first meeting. We entered the hall, which was full to overflowing, and found that the service was being conducted on similar lines to the meetings my sister had attended in the north of England. This time the medium was a man, and we heard him addressing several members of the audience in turn. To each one he gave descriptions of the spirit people who were waiting to communicate with them, and in most cases the names of such spirit people were given, and also the names of the sitters in the hall and of their families. With few exceptions, these descriptions and names were accepted as correct by the people who were addressed. In one outstanding case, a lady had her daughter described to her, giving her name. The lady responded, "The name is correct, but as my daughter was only a young girl when she passed over, your description is not correct." The medium replied, "Your child has grown up in the spirit world, continuing her education from where she left off when she passed over, and continuing to grow up until she reached what is considered on the other side to be the perfect age, which is round about the age of 35. A similar change takes place with elderly people who pass over, as after a time in the spirit world, they gradually grow younger until they also reach the same perfect age. This has sometimes been the cause of much misunderstanding and doubt, when the spirit communicators have forgotten that they have changed and have shown themselves to us mediums in the altered state." The medium then said, "Your daughter refers to a photograph which you have in her old bedroom, and where you keep a ring which she used to wear." The mother told the medium this was perfectly correct. This message and others which followed impressed us a little, although we could see the possibility of telepathy playing a big part. We noticed that the secretary of the society was selling psychic newspapers, the Psychic News, published in London, and Light, published, I think, in Manchester. These papers, issued weekly, seemed to have quite a large circulation, and on reading them, we discovered that there were a considerable number of mediums throughout the country, most of them professionals and attached to various psychic centres. We began to realize that we were going to have a very large field for our inquiries, and looked forward with interest to our investigations. We planned to sit with as many mediums as possible, both professional and private, and experience every form of phenomena. We also proposed to read every available book written on the subject, until we had satisfied ourselves that either a very large number of people were being hoodwinked, or that survival was an actual fact. If we really received proof that we lived on, we intended to try and obtain some of the higher teachings which we understood were being given, and which we felt might give us some knowledge of the laws which govern our existence on this earth, and those ruling on the other side. After our first meeting, we made an appointment with the medium, inviting him to visit our home during the following week. We explained to him that we were just starting on an intensive investigation into survival, and apart from giving us a sitting, we would like him to give us as much information as possible. When he arrived at our home, he explained several matters to us, which only touched on the fringe of the subject. The medium, Mr. Redmond, said, "I do not feel that my guide will be taking me in trance, but what is given to me tonight will be through clairvoyance and clairaudience." In response to our request, he went on to explain, "To give your messages under trance conditions means that, as a developed medium, I am able to leave myself open for the guide or guides to enable them to take control of my mind. Through me they can speak to my sitters, giving them messages from their side of life with any teachings they are allowed to give." The medium called this method of communication light trance, and further explained, "In that condition I am aware of what is said by my guides through my lips, but I am not able to assert any influence over their messages. I have heard of mediums who could influence the messages by mentally tuning in with the guides, but this is faulty mediumship and the frequent cause of wrong messages and descriptions being given. A further development of the trance condition is deep trance, when my soul leaves the body temporarily and the spirit controls are allowed to step in. In this case, it will be the control the sitter hears speaking, and through my lips will come the actual voice of the control guides and spirit people with all their usual characteristics. My soul is usually standing close to the body, ready to step back in again as soon as they depart. My soul is still attached to the body by a silver cord, and as long as that silver cord is not severed, I can return to my body when the spirit people leave it. But if the cord is severed, to return to my body would be impossible, and what you would call death would take place. My soul, being freed, would go on to the astral world, which you will learn about in much detail during your investigations. Of course, you must realize that my guides are taking great care of me, and will see that nothing can harm me or the physical body which I leave temporarily. I can feel when the guides are going to take me in trance, and when they are only going to use me clairvoyantly and clairaudiently. Can you tell us about these two forms of mediumship in fuller detail? Clairvoyance is when I see the spirit people as they appear to me. I do not see them objectively, but with an inner eye. Nevertheless, the spirit people are as solid to me when I see them in this way as when I see you with my own eyes. How do you know what they say to you and what messages you have to pass on to us? That is another form of mediumship known as clairaudience. Again, I do not hear objectively, but what they say seems to register in my ear, and I have no trouble in knowing what they say. Many messages are given to us mediums symbolically, and because of this, and mishearing the messages clairaudiently, many wrong messages are given. This has created a lot of doubt with sitters. He then paused for a couple of minutes and said to me, "Your father is with you." "Thank you. I presume you are seeing him? Can you describe his appearance?" He then gave me an exact description of my father, and also told me that his name was Alexander. This rather impressed me, as the name is not one which could be easily guessed at. He then turned to my wife and said, "Your father is also here with you," and gave an excellent description of him also, which we both easily recognized. He concluded by saying, "I have no messages for you from your two fathers this time, except that I have to tell you that you will be in close contact with both of them in the near future." He then gave us the names of some psychic books which he recommended as being the most suitable to assist us in our early investigations. A few days later, we booked a sitting with Mrs. Stella Hughes, who was well known in London. This medium was giving sittings to a maximum number of 8 sitters at the Golders Green Psychic Centre. The sitting was to be by clairvoyance, and is known as a sitting of 8. Of course, the medium would have to use clairaudience also to enable her to hear the messages, as these two types of mediumship usually go together. At the appointed time, we were shown into a barely furnished room with a few cupboards, an uncarpeted floor, and in the centre 9 hard wooden chairs were arranged in a semicircle. The medium occupied one of the chairs, and we and 6 others sat on the remaining chairs. She started to give messages to the sitters in turn, not in rotation, but as she explained, in the order in which the spirit people were seen by her and identified themselves to the sitters. After giving these messages with descriptions of the spirit people, which with few exceptions were accepted by the sitters as accurate, the medium turned to me and said, "Your father is here with you," and she then gave me an accurate description of him. She then said, "You have several guides who are interested in you and are looking forward to making themselves known to you at a later date. I cannot give you anything further, but would you be surprised if I told you that your people on the other side inform me that you will be writing a book on psychic matters in later years?" I certainly would be surprised, as I know very little of this subject so far, and have never had literary aspirations. I think I would prefer to leave that sort of thing to those who are more qualified to write on such a controversial subject. They tell me that you will be writing just the same, and will even surprise yourself. As I sit at my desk recording our experiences, Mrs. Hughes' messages given to me more than 25 years earlier come back to me, and I'm amused when I think of the slight knowledge my wife and I had at the beginning of our inquiries. "How do you see these people, and how are they dressed when they make themselves known to you?" I asked. "I see them with an inner eye, and usually they are dressed in similar attire to what they wore on Earth, which makes it easier for the sitter to identify them, but normally they wear spirit robes of beautiful hues. The colors vary according to their state of progress in the spirit world. Living on the same vibration, they are as solid to each other as we are to each other here. The two different vibrations on the earth and spirit plane make it impossible for people other than mediums to see each other, unless they on the other side lower their vibration to match that of ours, through me or any other medium. She then turned to my wife and said, I have a nun here who tells me her name is Sister Bernadetta. She is one of your guides and wants you to know that she is often with you. You will hear about her quite often in later years during your investigations. She continued by saying, I am sorry I have nobody else for you and can give you no further messages. I have a feeling that there is a reason for this. Maybe if you stay back when the others have gone, I might be told what it is all about. Just then we heard several taps on the cupboards in different parts of the room, and well outside the reach of the medium and the sitters. The medium smiled and said, All right, friends, we can hear you quite well and know that you are here. She then explained to us that the tappings were caused by one or more of the spirit people who were anxious to draw her attention to them to let us know they were present. When the sitting was over, my wife stayed back with the medium and I waited outside talking to the secretary. After about 10 minutes, my wife came out of the room looking very excited. She informed us that the medium had seen her father and described him accurately, and added that he had been waiting for this meeting and was hoping to be able to speak to her in the direct voice through the trumpet. She had been told by the guides that this was being arranged. My wife and I were to make inquiries, and within a short time we would be directed to a suitable medium with this particular psychic gift. I turned to the secretary and asked her if she knew of any mediums of this description. She replied, I can assure you that direct voice or trumpet mediums are extremely rare, and if you find one, you must be careful of possible trickery, as this type of mediumship more than others lends itself to fraud. You will find this out for yourselves later. The only medium I have heard of in London is a Mrs. Lee, who sometimes advertises in the psychic news when she has had vacancies for new sitters. We thanked her for her help and departed.